This is Mike Power, President and CEO of Silver Range Resources, and this is an update on our Strongbox property. First, a quick word from our lawyers. Strongbox is in Esmeralda County in southwest Nevada. It's about 54 kilometers southwest of Goldfield and about 80 kilometers northwest of Beatty. It's accessible via county roads, but you'd best be taking a 4x4 in here. The property currently consists of 38 claims staked on BLM land. There's no surface impairments in the area, and there are public roads accessing the property right through the center of it. TULE Canyon's got a long mining history. The earliest known miners in the area were Mexican-American placer miners working along the length of the canyon in the 1850s. Chinese placer miners moved in the 1870s, and there's been sporadic placer mining throughout the length of TULE Canyon to this day. Early hard rock prospecting located a number of high-grade veins. Notable among the early prospectors in the area was Jack Longstreet. He was looking for the lost Breyfogle mine. In 1906, after the discovery at Goldfield, there was a rush to the area led by Henry Stimler, one of the two founders or discoverers of Goldfield. He floated a small company to placer mine along the creek and also to exploit the hard rock showings. He built a 3-stamp mill and a small settlement at Roosevelt Wells, several miles north of Strongbox. And there's been intermittent mining, both placer and hard rock in the TULE Canyon area since then. There appear to have been modern operations dating from about the 1980s on the Strongbox property at both the Dark Secret mine on the west side of TULE Canyon and the EASTSIDE mine on the east side of TULE Canyon. In the lower end of TULE Canyon, where Strongbox is located, in 1890, Tom Jaggers found the Dark Secret mine on the west side of TULE Canyon. He built himself a stone cabin and a rastra and mined there in a solitary fashion for the better part of 30 years. Henry Stimler teamed up with him in the early 1900s. They floated a small public company on the property and sank a sizable shaft near the Dark Secret mine. On the east side of TULE Canyon, miners found another vein, what we call the EASTSIDE mine, and they exploited that through several shafts and adits and followed it to depth in the winds. Here's what remains. On the left, you can see a loading dock from the old Dark Secret mine. Miners were working a pit just over the brow of that hill and hand bombing it through that chute. On the right, you can see workings at the EASTSIDE mine. This is the winds. Well, let's have a look at the regional geology to see why this place is so well endowed with gold and silver. Well, Walker Lane is an 800-kilometer long by 100-kilometer wide fault zone that runs from Southern California along the Nevada-California border up into Northern California, where it ends against the Cascade Arch. What it is actually the new San Andreas Fault. It began down in Southern California about 23 million years ago, and it slowly propagated north like a crack in your windshield up to the Cascade Arch, where it's currently ended right now. Displacement across the fault is right lateral, so there's a component that's shifting the Sierra Nevada block north relative to North America, but it's also an extensional component that's moving the Sierra Nevada block away from North America. In detail, it's a topographic trough. In the center part of the zone, it's bounded by a series of northwest striking strike slip faults. These are the major faults, and there's a bunch of subordinate faults in here. And the Strongbox property occurs on the margins of the Walker Lane central belt here, and in a zone of transtension. Now, transtension is a fancy word for a fault that involves both strike slip displacement and expansion or extension, resulting in normal faulting. In detail, these tend to form extensional duplexes like this down here. You can see they're bounded by strike slip faults, and in between are a whole series of normal faults. And these are dandy areas to go look for ore deposits because normal faults open up pathways for hydrothermal fluids. What they typically manifest themselves at are sort of flower structures like this. In plan, they'll have this sort of pattern. Here, in cross-section, they look a bit like this. The Walker Lane is noted for high-grade gold and silver deposits. Some very famous ones. There's the Comstock up here, and Tonopah and Goldfields down here, and there are other numerous smaller high-grade gold and silver camps along the Walker Lane. And these are associated with tertiary volcanics, and that's the dominant kind of deposit you find here, although there's copper porphyries in the Yarrington area. Strongbox is located away from all of these major epithermal camps, and it appears to be something different. Focusing in on Strongbox, here shown in black, we find that the property is located in the Jurassic Sylvania Pluton. This is a granodioritic to granitic intrusion, probably an extension of the Sierra Nevada batholith. And in the immediate property area, that's all you see, granite and granodiorite. The only structure mapped in the area is this prominent shear here off to the west of the Strongbox property. And during our mapping, the geologist who ran the program noted that there's a large block of very resistant, undeformed granite, just a massive buttress right here. And that feature shows up in the aeromagnetics. You'll note that the aeromagnetic field is deflected right here, and it seems to be deflected around that block of granite right up here. So there seems to be some geologic feature exerting control on tectonics in the area. At property scale, the features of real interest are the veins, which host economic mineralization. The only area where you can trace them out to any extent is at the Dark Secret and Eastside mines. Elsewhere, we're basically screened by overburden. It's interesting to note that in the area of the Dark Secret mine, USGS astroimagery identified a significant phyllic alteration envelope. Now, this disappears off to either side, but that likely again might be due to that overburden cover. Let's take a spin down TULE Canyon. I'll show you the lay of the land. So we're looking west here, and in that arroyo or gully in the foreground, you can see the location of the old Dark Secret mine. To its left on that white splotch on the hill, it's a small open pit that was mined in the 1980s. Now we're swung around to the south. The open pit's in the center left of the drone footage. On the right, on the east side of TULE Canyon, in shadow, is the location of the EASTSIDE mine, where a vein runs along the face of the cliff. At the Dark Secret mine on the west side of TULE Canyon, the mineralization looks like this. It's vein-hosted, moderately east-dipping, coarse-grained quartz veins with disseminated pyrite, chalcopyrite, and galena, the latter two altered to malachite and sometimes friedite. There's intense alteration surrounding the veins, quite pronounced on the west side of TULE Canyon, locally argillic. What we found is anywhere you find hematite near or in the veins, it's a pretty good indicator of good gold grades. At the EASTSIDE mine on the other side of TULE Canyon, the mineralization's similar but a little different. It's steeper dipping, veins 2.5 meters wide in some exposures. You can see here that this reddish material is what tends to really run. The country rock is less altered than it is at the Dark Secret mine. Let's take a quick tour underground. We're heading down one of the a drift along the vein. You can see the footwall on the right, and some of the material they were gobbing out, particularly that reddish stuff would have run. Some of the stopes glory hole to surface. You can see the inevitable California party balloon. And at the end of the workings, there was a shaft to surface, and mineralization must have been pretty good here because they sank a winze. These workings date from the 1980s. Here's gold in rock samples. These are mostly grabs, some chips. Most of our sampling to date has been concentrated in the area of the Dark Secret and the EASTSIDE mines, although we found other vein occurrences on the property, some of which have returned good gold analyses. And here are the silver results, also some nice high-grade numbers. Our sampling distribution is kind of restricted by the limited exposure, so that accounts for the clustering. We did some chip sampling after noting that in addition to finding gold in the veins, we've also found gold in hematitic fractures and shears. So we ran a sample profile across the area of the Dark Secret mine. This was the old 1983 pit here. And we ran a line from the back of the head wall here to the toe. We sampled over 5-meter intervals and found a 40-meter interval of about 0.47 grams, within which there was a slightly higher grade interval of 20 meters at about 0.7 grams. So these results suggest to us there might be potential to find a bulk tonnage target in this area. Here's a look at our gold and soil results. We were unfortunately screened on the east side of TULE Canyon. As you can see, this is basically a wash, and we didn't get any decent results there. But on the other side of TULE Canyon, where we didn't face this problem, we got some excellent results, including samples up to basically almost 4.2 grams in soils. I think you could probably disregard this sample here. It might have come from the pit. There wasn't much silver response, but arsenic seems to be elevated, at least in the area of the Dark Secret mine. It might be a useful indicator elsewhere. We ran geophysical surveys at Strongbox, horizontal loop EM, and total magnetic field. The most useful results we found were in the 14 kilohertz horizontal loop EM data. Now, we were looking for conductors, but what we found was everything was conductive, and instead the most useful targets here were resistors. And that's what you're seeing in this plot here. The hot colors are more resistive rocks. And you'll notice there's quite a resistive block right here and several resistive trends. And you can see that these relate in some fashion to the Dark Secret and EASTSIDE mine. Might be no coincidence it's in this area of relatively high resistivity. So here's our target model. We're looking at the driveway of an unfortunate Southern California property owner. And there's a incipient strike-slip fault that happens to run through his property, and you can see what it's done to the concrete here. And we think that this is a pretty good model for what might be happening in the Strongbox area, where we have right lateral shear and the forming of a series of tension gashes. And these would be the sites where we might find the mineralization appearing. So what could this look like at Strongbox? Well, perhaps it looks like this. Let's have a look at a block model. And suppose that underneath Strongbox, there are actually a series of veins, as you saw in the previous example of the driveway. They might look like this. If we could find an area where these veins might be clustered together, it might make for a dandy bulk tonnage target. Maybe some of these veins are wide enough they're of interest just by themselves. Furthermore, we're not sure that the area where these veins cluster together is just here in the area of TULE Canyon. Our geophysical data suggests there's a resistivity high here, so there's good reason to suppose there might be a lot of veins there. But we have to keep in mind that the resistivity data was screened in the areas on either side. It's very high frequency and unlikely we wouldn't see another cluster of these veins should it occur elsewhere on the property. We got pretty good indication there must be a series of these veins across the length of the property, basically from the soils and sampling on the west side and from the sample results at the extreme east end of the property over here. So that's what we think might be going on at Strongbox. So at TULE Canyon, we have widespread gold, both in rocks and soils. We have past production, placer mining since the 1850s, and hard rock mining up into the 1980s. Geophysics mapping have demonstrated these structures extend to depth. And we have drill targets, starting down here in TULE Canyon. So we think this project is drill ready. We're looking for a partner and hope to see some action here this year. Thanks.